Okay, and we are on the air. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of What Do You Think? Today is Thursday, October 7th, 2021, and I hope everybody's been enjoying the fall weather the last couple of days, getting outside and breathing in some of that fresh air. Anyway, Kurt is on the line with me today, and we have what I came across something this morning that I thought would be a good catalyst for a program or a discussion on education. Many of you know, I'm sure Kurt does, that I'm a fan of Thomas Sowell. Thomas Sowell he must be about 93, 94 years old. He grew up in Harlem, and one of his fondest recollections is sleeping on the fire escape when it got too hot outside. I'm sure that was a common experience up until the late 60s, all over New York and other large cities during the August heat waves. I don't know if I told you this, Kurt, I once, for kicks, brought a transistor radio up with me to the roof of the house in the Bronx and slept up on the roof. There was not that there's anybody that goes from roof to roof, but the row houses is detached, and there were 5 of them in this group. And I knew the people that lived in 2 of them, and the other 3 were empty and boarded up. So I brought a sleeping bag, transistor radio, and I propped myself up towards the front because the roof is sloped on these row houses, and in the front area it goes up diagonally, and there's a flat covering for where the cornice is that has the outline for the bay window in the house. And so it's kind of like a recliner. You can sit on the roof towards the front, at the front of the house, and it's a recliner. And with the transistor radio on, I remember watching the elevated train, the 5 and the 2, go back and forth, and until I went to sleep. So that was the closest experience I've had to Thomas Sowell's recollections of growing up in Harlem. And I would say he's a philosopher, a thinker, has views on education. We're going to get a small part of that this evening, and also an economist. He actually, if you're interested, there's a video on his channel, Thomas Sowell, 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 on YouTube. And in it, he is testifying on a committee. And who is chairing that committee but a much younger Joe Biden? Thomas Sowell is much younger. He's got a nice head of hair. And it's interesting to see these 2 gentlemen and then listen to them go back and forth during this hearing. It was an investigative Senate hearing on some topic. I forget exactly what specifically it was. But I would recommend listening or watching not an episode, but a posting or 2. Every couple of weeks there's a new posting from Thomas Sowell. And I have grown to appreciate the wisdom of what he says, and kind of the a voice, so to speak, in a sea of changing sands, so to speak, for lack of a better word or way of expressing that. Very consistent voice over the last 40, 50 years. So the topic is, in schools these days, and these days I mean the last 10 years, not just recently, are we doing a good job teaching students, teaching younger people to critically think, to solve problems on their own, to form their own opinions, perhaps even to debate or express these opinions and then have them rebutted and then have a back and forth, polite and respectful conversation where information and views are exchanged. So a lot has changed since Kurt and I have been in school. I'm not sure. I did spend some time on the Board of Ed, so I did have some idea as to what was going on curriculum-wise. And the last couple of years, the mantra was critical thinking and gathering evidence, as I said, and coming up with your own conclusion, and even going perhaps a step farther, taking a position that you're initially not, you don't initially agree with, finding out, and then perhaps being persuaded yourself that there is another valid viewpoint to whatever the issue may be. So before we look at this 4-minute clip, Kurt, is there any thoughts? You're in a position where you have employees, and your employees need a certain level of problem solving skill set. If you had the chance to change anything or address or tweak anything in secondary education, by that I mean high school, I'm not talking college, but high school, is there anything that you would like to see changed so that your employees are better prepared for the demands that you place upon them in your business?
Well, because I'm in manufacturing, I'm really a proponent of trade schools who go more into detail, and for people that want to learn a certain trade. In general education, I find most of the people that we have don't seem to have strong analytical skills and don't tend to want to make any decisions on their own. They'd rather, pass it off to somebody else. It's not that they're not educated, it's just that, to deal with a problem, generally they don't use intuitive thinking. They just move on to somebody else and let them make the decision. No one's ever been, reprimanded for making what may have not been a good decision. And even in spite of that, they would just rather pass that off to somebody else. And, I think that's pretty common in manufacturing, and I've seen it more and more. I've been in manufacturing. Next year will be 50 years. And I do have to say things are sliding.
Okay. Again, if you had a magic wand and you had the ability to tweak or make an adjustment as to the curriculum or as to the exposure to the workplace of, let's say, a junior in high school or a senior in high school that not necessarily was going to go to college, especially if they were going into manufacturing, but perhaps some type of training program. How do you think the high schools could better prepare students for the type of environment that you need people to work within, whereby they do have to make decisions, they do have to, it is appreciated and rewarded initiative to look at different ways of more effectively achieving a goal. A lot of times, or at least in the past, innovations have come not necessarily from management, but actually from the floor of the facility where the manufacturing is taking place. Is there one or two things, right, are there one or two things that you would specifically like to see addressed during the last 2 years of high school that would help these students be better prepared for the demands of self-reliance within the workplace?
Yeah, I would have to say, even in my own personal experience, I did not encounter any of that kind of training in high school, and I found it actually came only at the college level. And of course, when I was in high school, there wasn't any electricity. So it's a long time ago. But basically, they really need to entice kids to have programs where they have an opportunity to work in groups and actually simulate an environment such that, say, for example, they're going to market their own product. They need to determine like marketing skills on how to advertise it, how to budget it, things like that. Real practical skills that are involved in, at least in manufacturing. Now, I hate to admit it, but I mean, I've watched even in my state, there's just been everybody leaving in the manufacturing field. I mean, manufacturing is becoming a dying art in the United States. But I would certainly think somebody that wants to go into computers and stuff, it seems like there might be a stronger curriculum now. But the thing is still the interplay with people. I think that's pretty weak in terms of having to deal with people. And I understand their age group, they're young, and the immaturity might kick in. But the thing is that I think preparedness for having to deal in the adult world and react with other people seems to be something important that is not done in high school, and I think they could.
Okay. You brought up an interesting point, and that is a set of social skills. And my biggest, and we've talked about this over dinner before, the thing that to me is a big red flag is when you have young people out with their family at a restaurant, and instead of talking with each other, each of them is on their own iPhone in their own little world.
Crazy.
Yes, and I think, why are you having dinner together this traditionally and for a good reason is a time when you enjoy something, you share something like good food or drink, and that gets the juices of conversation going instead of shutting them off through headphones or just through absorption in a small screen that's in front of you and between you and the other people at the table. I see that as, to me, a form of social cancer, and it certainly erodes, or it certainly has the counterproductive effect of lowering social skills and making people, especially younger people who know nothing, who know little different, who have experienced not enough in life to know better, to make them withdrawn. And when they go on a floor where there's other people, and initially when these people are strangers and they're expected to not only get along with these people, but to ask them questions, to learn from these people, to fit in with these people so that a common goal is achieved. And that's certainly the case with any manufacturing facility. And hopefully a sense of pride in what you've done and I was part of that. I remember I had a similar experience with at Electric Boat. I worked there one summer as a pipe fitter. And the scene has changed since '76 when I was there. But it was very difficult having a pride in what you did as preparing a piece of ductwork or pipe work that went onto a submarine, because of the process by which there was a lot of waste of time, not so much waste of material, but waste of time and energy. And I was grateful I was not there for life, but I think pride in being part of something, a team effort, whether it's a ball game or putting a product together that people need, I think you can't overvalue that. And it's a lesson in working with other people and enriching your own life that way. So, I think we'll start the Thomas Sowell film. It's only 4 minutes long, and I'd like your feedback on a couple of points that are brought up in this video. So, could we start that?
Go ahead.
Again, this is about 4 minutes long.
People are all born ignorant, but they are not born stupid. Much of the stupidity we see today is induced by our educational system, from the elementary schools to the universities. In a high-tech age that has seen the creation of artificial intelligence by computers, we are also seeing the creation of artificial stupidity by people who call themselves educators. Educational institutions created to pass on to the next generation the knowledge, experience, and culture of the generations that went before them have instead been turned into indoctrination centers to promote whatever notions, fashions, or ideologies happen to be in vogue among today's intelligentsia. Many conservatives have protested against the specifics of the things with which students are being indoctrinated, but that is not where the most lasting harm is done. Many, if not most, of the leading conservatives of our times were on the left in their youth. These have included Milton Friedman, Ronald Reagan, and the whole neoconservative movement. The experiences of life can help people outgrow whatever they were indoctrinated with. What may persist, however, is the lazy habit of hearing one side of an issue and being galvanized into action without hearing the other side. And more fundamentally, not having developed any mental skills that would enable you to systematically test one set of beliefs against another. It was once the proud declaration of many educators that we are here to teach you how to think, not what to think. But far too many of our teachers and professors today are teaching their students what to think about everything from global warming to the new trinity of race, class, and gender. Even if all the conclusions with which they indoctrinate their students were 100% correct, that would still not be equipping students with the mental skills to weigh opposing views for themselves in order to be prepared for new and unforeseeable issues that will arise over their lifetimes after they leave the schools and colleges. Many of today's educators not only supply students with conclusions, they promote the idea that students should spring into action because of these pre-packaged conclusions. In other words, vent their feelings and go galloping off on crusades, without either a knowledge of what is said by those on the other side or the intellectual discipline to know how to analyze opposing arguments. When we see children in elementary schools out carrying signs and demonstrations, we are seeing the kind of mindless groupthink that causes adults to sign petitions they don't understand, or, worse yet, follow leaders they don't understand, whether to the White House, the Kremlin, or Jonestown. A philosopher once said that the most important knowledge is knowledge of one's own ignorance. That is the knowledge that too many of our schools and colleges are failing to teach our young people. It takes a certain amount of knowledge just to understand the extent of one's own ignorance. But our educators have given assignments to children not yet a decade old to write letters to members of Congress or to presidents, spouting off on issues ranging from nuclear weapons to medical care. Will Rogers once said that it was not ignorance that was so bad, but all the things we know that ain't so. But our classroom indoctrinators are getting students to think that they know after hearing only one side of an issue. It is artificial stupidity.
A couple of things that immediately come to my mind after seeing that twice now. I would have stayed away from, and Kurt, perhaps you'll agree or disagree, but I would have stayed away from showing popular figures from today's mass media, be they environmental activists, be they congresswomen, be they somebody else. I don't think that helps the argument because in my mind it it's unnecessary to label people or to actually pigeonhole them. And whereas I may not agree with some of the points of view of the people that were shown, I don't think it's beneficial to the discussion to have them shown in the video, especially when the narrator is talking about stupidity. There's a subliminal message that is not really so subliminal, and I don't think it really helps in a healthy discussion. Whether or not students are being taught to think or they're being taught what to think. I don't know, that's the first thing that hit me, because I try to kind of think, second guess how effective the message is that's being delivered in the video through the narration or moving images that are being shown. And what's your take on that, Kurt? Do you understand the point that I'm trying to make?
Oh, yeah. That were valid, but I'm not so sure that it's actually education that may be stilting kids' thoughts or whatever. I think a lot of that biased thought, again, is through either the television media or certainly it's a big thing going on in the government now with Facebook. I mean, I think younger people are really more affected by peer information and what they're seeing on the internet than so much of a teacher trying to introduce that kind of mindset. I mean, I wish the opposite had happened. I mean, I had not heard things when I was learning things like American history that should have been said a long time ago, like 100 years ago in Tulsa, what happened. All of that stuff was quashed, you know, from general historical education. But it's been a long time since I've been able to see teachers, you know, in action and what kind of curriculum they're giving to the children. I would hate to think that, you know, political beliefs is a strong thing being done by general education. I really hope that's not true. But I see, you know, I mean, it is a very subliminal thing that they're trying to pass along, is that it's education that's turning these kids in this manner, and I'm not really convinced that. I think it's media and the internet.
Right. It could be more likely a combination. It's not just one source that is having a large impact or a large influence on how younger people think, but you bring up an excellent point, the role of big tech and media, and how big tech and media, through mechanisms like Facebook or vehicles like Facebook, are targeting younger people, younger minds.
Yeah, and they have a definite agenda.
Yes, they do. They have a definite agenda, and it's not one of cerebral liberation or
No.
spirituality, spiritual liberation.
No.
It's not one of enlightenment. It's basically one of a subliminal message of going along, or what's the word, complying or following a general march or a general narrative that, of course, benefits these these vehicles, these social media vehicles, as you said, such as Facebook. And I watch, because I have to, commercials that now constantly interrupt what you watch. I'm not a member of Facebook. I don't know anything about Telegram. I don't know anything about TikTok, except TikTok goes the clock. Or these other mechanisms, or these other creations. I don't know what a cloud is, except it's in the sky and it's generally shades of gray. But that's interesting. My antivirus protection has expired. I hope they're talking about the laptop and not my health. But anyway, this message just popped up. It's not an advertisement, but it's something else to get my attention through fear. But anyway, my point is, I often see children targeted in these ads that pepper anything that is posted on YouTube, whether it's a song, music video, a TV serial from the 60s or something like that. And I see either older people are targeted for health reasons, or I see younger people targeted, 5 and 6-year-olds. And I think, what happens when the computer is the babysitter and there's no parental supervision as to what the child is exposed to? It's far worse than what we were exposed to in television, say in the 60s and even the 70s. So I think I'm alarmed by two things. First thing is childhood is being robbed. Children are losing their innocence and their sense of wonder at an earlier and earlier age, and I think that's criminal. And I think it's especially criminal when you profit monetarily through that type of approach, that type of manipulation of young minds and manipulation of their value system, which very often would run counter to what their parents or what their family unit would stand for, had there been more supervision as to the exposure to these ads. But also it's this is what we see. How much is actually in the programming that we don't see, that are these hidden messages that the scientists that have research to tell these advertisers what triggers consumers, what catalysts will get them to buy. All right, you get me to buy Coca-Cola. You tell me that, or you tell me you tell me that I'm a certain man or a certain person if I drink Coca-Cola or if I smoke Marlboro cigarettes. That's one thing. But what about if we get into something, a larger picture, where we're looking at democracy, where we're looking at discussion of anything from crime and punishment to how we look at our neighbor, how we look at people who are of a different religion or ethnic background. I mean, there's so many, with technology, there's so much more responsibility towards being honest with people. And when money is greasing so many wheels, there's a whole Pandora's box of disaster waiting for us if we have children that have unchecked access to these forces. And I'm going to say they're forces, these advertising forces, or these people that are supplying entertainment, and especially when we've been triggered towards comfort and entertainment and away from sacrifice and hard work to achieve. I really think that it's that's something to be alarmed about, and the shortfalls of this video put aside, and there are numerous shortfalls. Again, I think they could have been more effective had they looked at not just teachers, but, as you said, Kurt, social media as having a potentially negative, very destructive impact on young people, and also their mothers and fathers, especially if their mothers and fathers are still in their teens or early 20s, and they're taken in by what they see on the screen or what they hear in music or a report or something. So anyway, I've talked long enough. Kurt, did you have anything else that you would like to add to the topic of discussion?
No, you pretty much covered it. And again, it was an interesting clip that played. as you say, it was very smooth.
Well,
The narration was awesome. I mean, the guy was a very good announcer. But yeah, they definitely had an agenda going on putting that together.
yes, there was an agenda, and I think the positive that I take away from the agenda in the video is that, as you said, it channels first education, but education, as you know, takes place outside of the classroom as well. And especially when this type of entertainment or this activity, whether it's a video game where you're killing people or destroying cities or something else, or something totally innocuous or harmless, when you're involved with that instead of interacting with family members at least or friends, it's too pervasive. And it's like so much we can have technology that is very beneficial and enriches our lives and makes it easier for us to be better people, to provide for our families, to be better citizens within a community. But if it's overused, it could have the negative effect. And I think we have a bigger issue in this country and other countries as well, especially in the West, whereby we blindly embrace a technological advance, a gadget, or some type of the next iPhone without realizing or thinking out how is that going to affect, first of all, the formation of young minds, the formation of young habits, the formation of young value systems, because we rarely talk about the value side, the balance of the spiritual and the material. The spiritual is not discussed at all. And I'm not talking about whether you're a Christian, a Muslim, a Jew, whatever. But just the fact that people need cores and they need principles by which to guide them. And we don't discuss this in school because it's a secular system. But I think there are many ways through education, to kind of be exposed to this without proselytizing, without being a preacher. And certainly, I think we've discussed this. You can talk about Zen values. You can talk about Zen and meditation. You can talk about Judeo-Christian values through not preaching the Ten Commandments, but what are the Ten Commandments? Who was Moses and how did they come to be? I think we're missing that opportunity to expose children or young people to a series of value systems that go back thousands of years that we need to be aware of because they're very much part of today's world. And that's why I think we suffer when we go on these adventures overseas, like when we decide we're going to hunt terrorists and we're going to go after the Taliban. When we have no understanding of Islam, we have no understanding of how the Taliban group was formed, we have no understanding of the different values and why there is a certain reluctance, if not a downright hatred, towards how they see us and what values they see us projecting through technology and through weaponry to their country or their turf, so to speak, their culture, and how they see that as a threat. There's more than one way. Our way of looking at life, our way of living together is not the only one, and it's certainly not one that is perfect. But I see that I see shortfalls, and I would like to think, in closing, that the role of the school is to prepare young people to be lifelong learners, lifelong readers, lifelong thinkers, and to prepare students for a lifelong evolution in their way they see the world, the way they see themselves, and how they interact. I think all of us, that there's an evolution we go through. There's it's called wisdom, and wisdom comes from experience and is not just book knowledge. So my wish is that whether you call it indoctrination, whether you call it critical race theory, or whether you call it identity, the study of the self, my wish is that students leave with a further thirst for knowledge, a further enthusiasm for life, and all the wonderful possibilities that it offers, regardless of who you are, regardless of where you live, and that our schools are preparing young people in communion with their parents to be lifelong learners. And so that's what I take away from this, in which they form their own opinions, they seek out the information themselves, and they have that curiosity to learn more, to open a book, to go online, to view a video, to talk about what they've seen or what they've read with other people, and to actually be part of a learning group or a community of thinkers. And that's what I hope our schools are in the process of doing when they have all those young minds seated before them, and hopefully, at least in the early grades, enthusiastic for about learning. So, Kurt, was there anything else that you would like to add?
No, that was complete.
Okay.
Well, what you said was well said.
Yeah, I just, this is from personal experience from my own high school days, and also from what I've seen as a teacher, and where there's been missed opportunities and where students have been turned off from learning and have withdrawn not only from learning but from other people. And it takes a long time to get over that, and there's a lot of unnecessary suffering in the meantime, and further missed opportunities. And I think our biggest task is to encourage them to be lifelong learners and lifelong citizens of where they are, and in turn citizens, as they say, of the world, but citizens of the world who are connected to their backyards. So Kurt, we will talk again soon about the other side of stuff, and more personal notes. But I'm going to say good evening. I'm going to say good evening to everyone who's tuned in. And again, we'll be back next Thursday at 5:45. And as you can see, this is a call-in program. Your calls and thoughts are always welcomed on whatever subject we happen to be talking about, or perhaps something else that isn't being covered. So, Kurt, I'm going to wish you a good evening, you and Boris, and we'll talk again soon.
You as well. Enjoy the lovely fall weather.
Yes, yes, I am. I just wish the days were a bit longer, but that's the tail end of it. That's the other side of the coin.
Yeah. Right.
All right. Das wird Anja, Kurt.
Thank you, and have a good evening. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye, everybody. Have a good weekend, and God bless. Cheers.